Another week, another Apple Circle podcast. This week, we have some more confirmation of something we've been talking about the last few episodes. It's getting juicy. The Apple September event is official. September 14th, we are going to get new Apple products, which is nice. I feel like we've been in this drought of Apple products for quite a while, and we're going to get that ball rolling. But before we do that, I'm here with Robert Rosenfeld.
Hey.
Thank you for joining for another episode. Also, before we get into it, we have a Apple Circle hotline. So this is where you can call in, ask us questions, send us a text. Don't worry, no one's going to answer on the other end. It's just going to go straight to voicemail, or you can text like we said. But that's where you can ask this question, get involved, and we would really enjoy that. That number is 949-354-3508. So you just text that, call that, and maybe on the next episode we will talk about it. And just it's just a nice way to get involved. But yeah, September event is official. Man, it's like semi-exciting, but also kind of like finally.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we had the tentative date. We knew announcements were probably going to go out. We know what Apple is expected to announce. It's like at this point, we're just ready to get this event over with. Just make it official so we can order the phone and get it in our hands because, like you said, like, okay, we expect this. We know it's coming, and I guess now we have final confirmation. California streaming is happening on Tuesday, September 14th at 10 a.m. It's going to be a virtual event again, so super sleek video. And we are basically expecting what we kind of mentioned before, iPhone 13, AirPods 3, Apple Watch Series 7, and then I've seen some conflicting news over the past couple of days whether we're going to see iPad mini or an updated 9th gen regular iPad, or maybe both. That seems to be a little up in the air. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see iPads at all because I think AirPods, iPhone, and Apple Watch is enough to kind of fill a presentation. But everything's kind of locked in, right, Matt? I don't know if there's any last-minute rumors for iPhones or anything you've kind of seen in the news rumor cycle that kind of gets you a little bit more excited, or is it sort of just status quo?
Yeah, I mean, so last time we talked about, there was a rumor that the Apple Watch Series 7 was delayed due to some manufacturing issues. It seems like that is probably still happening, like they're still having issues, but we are actually going to see it. And as far as I saw, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're not going to be delayed. It's just going to be short supply of the Apple Watch Series 7, which I guess is fine with me. That's kind of the thing that we've talked about is the thing that's getting us the most excited about this new event, because Apple Watch is getting a full redesign, which we haven't seen really ever. Yeah, there was a slight redesign with the Series 4, but this is like completely different. So as I'm happy to know that seems like it's not going to be fully delayed, even if it's going to be a little harder to get your hands on up front. I think it does make sense that the iPad is not going to get announced here, just because, like, think of it this way. The iPhone, AirPods, the watch, those are like the mobile, like iPhone kind of thing. The M1X is in the iPad now, so it's kind of like that's a computer, even though these new rumored iPads are not going to have the M1 chip, or not M1, you know what I mean, M1, not M1X. But so it kind of makes sense that those would be paired with like the Macs, and we are expecting a November event. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But yeah, I think those three products are pretty solid to be announced here. And well, here's another question. Do you think we're going to get any surprises?
As much as I'd love to say yes, I don't think so. I mean, usually there is some element of surprise. There could always be a one more thing. But typically with iPhone events in particular, there is so much hype and so much interest and so many leaks about this that we basically know all there is to know about the iPhone in particular. I mean, I think we're 95% confident we know what that phone's shaping up to be. I think with AirPods 3, there's maybe a little bit more of an element of surprise, and also Series 7, though we've seen leaks, we haven't really done kind of a deep dive into everything that's going to have. So I think that maybe with those products, there might be a little bit more to get excited about. But with iPhone 13, we kind of know what there is to know. So as much as I'd love to see some surprise debut of the M1X, I don't think it's going to happen. I've seen some rumors that Apple's going to do one big mega event and just release everything at once. I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be a very sleek, polished, but straightforward status quo Apple Fall event that, hey, this is the iPhone, this is the Apple Watch, here are new AirPods, enjoy, pre-order them Friday, get them next week, let's get these out, let's get them shipped, and let's get moving on something else.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm expecting too, which is, I miss the days of the allure of an Apple podcast. Like back with like the original iPad, for instance, like there were leaks, obviously, but it wasn't like it is now where literally everything going in, we've seen it. There's been physical models. Like we've basically held them in our hands, like literally.
And that's actually a really good point, man. I guess it's a great question to ask you and everyone watching. What are your thoughts on the leaks? Because I know some people actively try to avoid any leaks, any spoilers. They try to kind of go dark and live under a rock for a year so they don't know what's coming from Apple, or particularly with the new iPhone. But when you're in the tech world, and especially when you're in the Apple world, having to follow this for work especially, it's kind of hard not to get sucked in down the rabbit hole and learn every little new thing. And I know that at the end, you kind of have sort of the best or worst of both worlds, that you know everything there is to know about the iPhone 13, but you also, in a bad way, know everything there is to know. There really isn't a big element of surprise. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Do you wish that you could be totally disconnected and just not know anything, so you could sort of sit down like the average consumer and just be totally blown away when the iPhone is officially unveiled?
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice. It's like I'd love to be like in the middle. For our jobs, like you said, like there's no way we can hide from these rumors. Like it's just not going to happen. We're going to see what's going to happen, what's coming, what we're going to see. So there's really no way to get away from that. But if this wasn't our job, me personally, I'd still be looking at all the leaks. Like I'm just interested in that kind of stuff. So I would be looking at it, but it would be nice to just not care necessarily, like get excited when it comes out, but not care to like dive in deep on everything. But on the same note, I wouldn't want to be the person who buys the iPhone 12 on September 13th. You know what I mean? Like those people exist. I don't want to be that disconnected, but also it'd be nice to just be surprised every once in a while. I guess, maybe in some way it does make it more interesting when there is a surprise. Like we think we know everything, and then when there is something completely different, that makes it like even more interesting. I think the last time we saw, maybe, I guess not, now that I'm thinking about it, we did have leaks on this, but the new iMacs, when they released the M1 iMacs, we hadn't really seen the full design. Like we knew basically what they were going to do, but for instance, the chin, we didn't know that there wasn't going to be an Apple logo and that there was going to be a chin. I remember being very surprised by that and taken aback in not a great way, even though now I kind of used to it and it looks fine. But like those kind of little surprises still happen. I don't know. If you're taking this from Apple's perspective, they are not happy with these leaks. They've been doing a ton, legally even, to stop these leaks. But yeah, I don't know.
It just, and that's
more so. I'm just go ahead.
I was going to say that's kind of the downside of the leaks too. And with the iMac in particular, we had heard so much about this huge redesign and like this iMac Pro looking thing that like looked like a Pro Display XDR, and we got all excited. And then Apple debuted the iMac that we know now is kind of the new 2021 iMac, and a lot of people were upset because it was not what they were expecting. That if you sort of followed the leaks and the rumors and you kind of got your expectations a little too high, then you were disappointed by what many consider to be this sort of ugly redesign of the iMac. And that is something that's tough because it's kind of totally out of Apple's control. They are making what they're going to make. They're not trying to leak it. They're not trying to put false hope in anybody's head on what could be there or not be there. And when they release it, they're getting some criticism, a little bit unwarranted, because that's just what happens when you follow the leaks and rumors.
It is what it is. Like they've been making these products for years at this point. So it's like, it's not their fault that this is what they made, or I mean, it is, like, obviously they made it. They made choices to make those designs. But I mean, like, our surprise or our disappointment is not their fault. This is the product they were making the whole time. And yeah, we're just disappointed. Speaking of getting a little too hyped on rumors, though, we saw a big one today. We're recording this on Wednesday. I don't even know what the date is. The 8th of September. And John Prosser, who has leaked tons of stuff before, has done the first real big leak of the iPhone 14. Not the iPhone 13, the iPhone 14. And according to him, he has seen pictures of the actual product. He has seen, I think maybe even video, but basically he said schematics. So he's seen like pictures of the actual product and schematics of what it's made of. But yeah, Robert, run us through what we're seeing with this. Now, obviously, there's the caveats of everything. Like, this is very early. So even if this is real, which he has a pretty decent track record of products, even if it's real, this could change substantially before we see it next year.
Right.
But yeah, what are we going to see?
I tend to believe John too here, just because, well, I guess a couple of reasons. One is that this sort of corroborates a lot of the information we got from other analysts like Ming-Chi Kuo. Like, we'll kind of go point by point here, but that does stack up to what John Prosser just showed us. And also, we know that Apple typically works ahead a bit on future iPhones. So even though the iPhone 13 is not official, you better, assume that it's full steam ahead inside of Cupertino on the iPhone 14. They are obviously modeling this. They're in some stage of development on this phone. And even the iPhone 15 or whatever comes next in 2023, Apple is working on this. So it's not surprising to see some sort of early looks at what we're expecting to see next year launching in 2022. And with that said, what we are expecting to see is actually really surprising and really exciting. So the look of this phone is very reminiscent to the iPhone 4. It's a fan favorite. It was sort of the first of the iPhones to get a radical redesign. It got the industrial design. And for better or worse, this phone also, I guess funny enough, had a massive leak of the actual design before it actually was announced by Steve Jobs himself. I think WWDC 2010. Back in June of 2010, and looks like the same.
Yeah, this was a WWDC iPhone. One of the rare specific iPhone events.
This same design is being plagued by leaks once again. But if you take a look at John Prosser's renders here, they look really nice. Obviously, it's a very reminiscent design to the iPhone 4, and Apple is continuing to sort of double down on the industrial design, sort of what we got with the iPhone 12. They're continuing to kind of refine it and make it even look more like the iPhone 4, specifically with the power volume buttons, rather, on the side. They're circular, sort of something we haven't seen in quite some time. We have sort of the square rectangular buttons here now on sort of modern iPhones. Going back to circular would be cool. And then I'll kind of go over the other big features here, then we'll kind of discuss on kind of our thoughts. No notch, hole punch camera on the top. We have sort of a recessed camera system now in the back, no substantial camera bump, no protruding camera system on the back, lightning port on the bottom, and it's very radically different than what we've seen now. But again, something that kind of confirms earlier reports we heard from other analysts. So hole punch camera, non-protruding camera system on the back, design very refined and reminiscent to the iPhone 4. Matt, what are your thoughts kind of at first glance? What's your excitement level for this iPhone 14?
I think it's pretty cool. I'm definitely pumped if this is what we're going to see. Like I think a lot of people, the iPhone 4 is one of my favorite designs of the iPhone ever. That's where we got the first Retina display. That's where they first started taking the camera seriously. That's where they really started taking the design seriously. That was such a big shift for the phone.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
iPhone 4, I'm just kind of remembering this now. Radical redesign. It wasn't the first to do HD video, but like you said, the camera was significantly improved. The second year the iPhone could do video after the 3GS. FaceTime was announced.
That's true. Front-facing camera.
There was just a lot there. I'm just kind of remembering the iPhone 4, and I'm kind of getting excited all over again, even though Gizmodo leaked it.
Yeah. Well, that was like I remember like those leaks, and that was very... it was like a bombshell. Like, wow, this is the new iPhone. And I remember, like, through the Apple logo on the screen, even though they couldn't get the phone to work, like, you could tell that it was a high-res screen. And everyone was like, what's this going to look like? And it ended up being the Retina display, which I think, even though, like, high-res, sure, high-res means high-res, that's great. But the Retina display quality was even better than I think a lot of us expected it to be. And even to this day, like, that set the standard for what a phone display should be. Yeah, that was great. And that was also, I think, the first phone that I remember taking pictures with that I was happy with. Mm-hmm. That I was like, wow, this is a great photo. And they really have, like, when you look at the iPhone 4, the things that they're working on today are basically the same. They're just improving them, year over year. That really set the stage for what the iPhone was going to be. And like I remember a few years later, like with the iPhone 5S or whatever, then they would talk about how on Flickr, the number of photos taken with the iPhone was like going up and up. They had that chart, Flickr of all things, like these days. But yeah, I like that phone a lot. So seeing kind of, I don't know if I think the circular buttons kind of make this a throwback to the iPhone 4, like clearly. There's no reason to do that necessarily. So I'm all for this. So a few interesting notes about the design. So on the back, it seems like we're going back to a glossy glass instead of the frosted, which, like visually, I like that. But when you actually use it, the fingerprints on the iPhone 4 and anything with a glass back that's not frosted, it's not the best look with all those fingerprints on it. But whatever, that's neither really here or there. The edges, though, are not supposed to be stainless steel or aluminum. They're supposed to be titanium. Now, again, this was a rumor that we had heard, I believe, from I can't remember exactly who said that, but I have heard that before, that the iPhone 14 was going to be using titanium as its building material, which sounds kind of crazy, but Apple's been working with titanium for years and years. Back with was it the PowerBook? Did they have titanium in the PowerBook, or was that when they moved to the MacBook Pro?
I want to say it was PowerBook. Correct me if I'm wrong in the Apple Circle feedback hotline or in the comments down below, but I think that there was at least some kind of titanium.
The 15-inch, the 15-inch PowerBook had titanium, a complete titanium build, which is kind of crazy to think about. They also currently today make an Apple Watch made out of titanium, so they're not strangers to this design or material. So I don't really know what that means. I guess stronger, but also lighter. I guess that's what you would think. Other things about the design, it is thicker. So the camera bump is there. It's just they made the phone thicker to kind of eliminate that. So it's like the size of the camera bump is the same. It's just there's no actual bump because the phone itself is bigger, if that makes sense. And another thing with that camera is apparently a periscope camera, which we've seen on a lot of phones. Basically, it's a way to get optical zoom in that size of a phone. So they actually shift the camera sensor sideways and use a bunch of mirrors and lenses so that it's kind of crazy tech, but basically it gives you really high quality optical zoom. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, especially in this leak. What about you though? What's your general thoughts on this?
I'm very excited, and I think that it comes at a very interesting time because it kind of does not make the iPhone 13 look all that great, but
exactly.
That's also, I mean, I know that was done on purpose, and kudos to John Prosser and his team. These are beautiful renders and a really great exclusive scoop. And it's not their fault that the iPhone 13 it's an S here for what we've kind of talked about before. But I'm excited. The coolest thing to me, though, I think that something that we heard rumored and it looks like it's actually going to happen is, at least on one model, even John Prosser is kind of clarifying here that he's showing us the 14 Pro Max with a hole punch camera on the top. There is no notch. The notch is gone. And it looks like Apple is kind of move a lot of the Face ID components under the display. This confirms reports from Ming-Chi Kuo, also confirms reports from Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg that this was Apple's plan. And what I'm curious, though, this looks obviously great. I'm all in for this. Love the hole punch camera. Interesting that it's in the center, not on to the side, but I'm okay with that. But what about Touch ID? Because we had heard from Ming-Chi Kuo that we could see under-display Touch ID in the iPhone 14 in 2022. But according to Mark Gurman, it seems like Apple is kind of moving ahead to make Face ID superior, and Touch ID is kind of this inferior tech for lower end iPhones. John Prosser didn't mention this. Maybe he doesn't know. That's totally okay. I understand. What are your thoughts, Matt? Do you think with a radical redesign like this, we will get Touch ID under the display, or do you think this is a Face ID exclusive iPhone? It's a better, improved Face ID system, and the big story here is just really the lack of the notch.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I could see on the Max version maybe including it, but yeah, I think they're still full steam ahead with Face ID. The question is, where's Face ID going to be in this design? So there's a whole bunch camera. Is it going to be pushed up into the bezel, or is it going to be under the display? We've heard both. Right. Apple's working on both versions. I think it could be under the display, to be honest. So right now we have a few phones that have cameras under the display, and they work to varying degrees of success. They do work. You can see that there's nothing there, and then you open up the camera, and then bam, a camera kind of pops up and works. It's very cool technology. The issue is you are still looking through those pixels, so it really gives you a bad look for when taking photos. It kind of looks hazy. You can tell that there's like a filter on top of it. But with the way they're implementing this, the camera wouldn't have that issue because it's cut out all the time. I'm thinking that it could be under the display because you wouldn't necessarily, at least in theory, need the sharpest image for Face ID. Like it could shine through the display for the sensors and still work perfectly fine. And then when you need to take a photo, there's an actual cutout there. So I'm thinking that's possible. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. That could be not possible at all. But that's my initial guess, at least. What about you? What do you think?
I think John Prosser even clarified too that the camera is not under the display because of sort of that haze you described with sort of the Samsung folding phones. So maybe the true depth components like the dot projector and all that stuff is under the display. That makes sense. But I also want to sort of ask you, Matt, a controversial question, not because I'm looking to stir up controversy, but because I think some people will ask, and it's probably a good discussion to have. Do you think that if these leaks and rumors are true, taking a look at what we know about the iPhone 14 and comparing it to the iPhone 13, do you think Apple was sort of holding out on us this year? Was there potential for more of a bigger upgrade to come to the iPhone 13, especially when you look at what they've done with the notch? And if this is true with the iPhone 14, it's kind of weird that they went from the same notch for a number of years, then a slightly smaller notch, then no notch at all. I just find it hard to believe that Apple just couldn't go from notch to no notch, and we're sort of in this weird sort of transition period with the 13. Do you think that there was a chance for a bigger upgrade to come to the 13, or do you think that this is just what it is and it just takes time due to delays or whatever happened to make these moves possible?
I don't know. I think this is just kind of what it was going to be, because we kind of talked about this last week, but this basically is the iPhone 12s. They just kind of, for whatever reason, stopped doing the iPhone or the 12s or S moniker. For whatever reason, they decided not to do that anymore. We talked about whether or not it would be the 12s or would it be the 13, but we've seen tons of leaks now that 13 is going to be what it is. We've seen packaging, we've seen cases, all that kind of stuff. So the fact that it's called the 13 coming from the 12 makes you just mentally think that this should be a much bigger update. But if you think of it as an S year, this is a perfectly normal, typical update that Apple would always do. Like if you look at the 6 to the 6S, what did we get? We got a new color and we got 3D touch. That's it. I mean, like there was really nothing that they did to that phone, but I guess I had the new processor and stuff, but it wasn't that much of a difference. I guess maybe that's the 6 to the 6S actually was a pretty decent jump because they actually made it not bend anymore. So, there was some more engineering, but you get what I'm saying.
4S.
It wasn't. There you go.
There's plenty
exactly.
of S-year examples where there is some big new feature. Like this year, it's promotion and maybe always on display. Really cool, gets the attention, gets the headlines. But really, if you look at a year-to-year upgrade, it's not anything huge. Totally agree with that.
Exactly. So that's what's, I think, really hindering this phone right now is that people are thinking of it as the 13. But yeah, it is what it is at this point. I'm not that surprised that they would be doing something bigger for the next generation because, we got this new redesign with the 12. We need that for at least one more year, and then we will get the redesign. That's how they've always done it until they did the iPhone 10. So it seems like they're getting back on that track.
That was weird though, because I was just thinking about that in terms of design, because usually Apple followed, for those who don't know, this tick-tock cycle where I guess you think of a clock, like you have the ticks that are the smaller incremental, the S years, and then the talks kind of the bigger shifts to something different. And we used to have, like you kind of mentioned, Matt, 3GS 4, 4S 5, 5S 6, 6S, blah, blah, blah. Like that's how it went. But with the 10, things are kind of so dramatically different that the clock just sort of reset. And we had the 10, then we had the 10S, and then we had the 11 and the 11 Pro, which really wasn't substantially different from what we had with the 10 and 10S. It really wasn't until the 12 in 2020 that things sort of changed again. And now it sort of seems like we're back on this TikTok cycle where we have the 12, the 12S, 12, 13, and then now the 14, which is, putting the names aside, we have a big design change, same design, and then another big design change, and that is what
Exactly.
what's coming with the 14 is a more radical design change where there might not be a bunch of other features, but man, it's going to look radically different than what we had before. And then I'd also expect, the 15 to stay the same, and then we get something else with the 16. So looks like we're getting back to a bit of a more predictable track record. Another thing I'll mention here that John Prosser didn't touch on, I don't know why, but I'm sure maybe he didn't have the information, but just to kind of give you guys the info from Ming-Chi Kuo, we're hearing that next year the iPhone lineup again will change. So not only will we get this radical redesign, but the sizes of the iPhone will change. So the mini will go away, and we're going to get a 14, a 14 Max, a 14 Pro, then a 14 Pro Max. So there's going to be just two screen size options, 6.1 and 6.7, and then you'll be able to kind of choose whether you want the regular version or the Pro version. But it is going to be nice to see that Max version on the sort of lower end iPhone. I am curious though, I guess we don't know, are all the iPhones going to get this radical redesign? Is it just for the Pro end series? I wouldn't be surprised if we sort of get all the glitz and glamour on the Pro and Pro Max, and maybe the regular iPhone 14. I wonder if it even keeps the smaller notch, or maybe it has a bit of a redesign, but it doesn't look radically different. How do you think Apple's going to do this next year?
If it was like up to me and I was designing this, I would kind of go back to the route of like the 10R and the 11. No, what was that? The 10S and the 10R. Like this is the lower end phone and this is the Pro phone, and they're pretty similar, but they're not exactly the same. Like right now when you look at the 12 and you look at the 12 Pro, they're basically the same. It's just one is aluminum and one is stainless steel. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much the difference there. Obviously, you got like cameras and that kind of stuff, but like from a design standpoint, that's really the difference. But what that ended up doing, I think, for a lot of people is it makes the Pro much less special. Like, again, if I didn't care about like photography, I would get the 12. I would get the regular 12 because the cameras are very good still, and all the internals are the same. The design is basically the same. The screen is OLED. It's got all the features pretty much. It makes the Pro less intriguing unless there's one specific feature. Like for me, I want the camera. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it would be better or worse for Apple for sales if there was the phone that was perceived as the lesser phone and then the more special phone. Like, when the 10R came out, it was very clear that this was the lesser of the iPhones. Then they went to the 12, or I guess, the 12. No, they did this with the 11. The 11, they made the regular phone the 11, even though that was basically the 10R, the updated version of that. But it made it feel so much more like the iPhone instead of the lower iPhone. And I think I think that was a good move. They obviously sold a ton of iPhone 11 models. I don't know. I just want the Pro model to be more pro, more fancy, because I'm spending that money for it. Like, give me more. That's basically what I'm thinking.
Lightning also, again, will stick around next year. So if you're hoping for the move to USB-C, I don't think that's going to happen on the iPhone. I'm sorry to break any hearts there, but that's not going to happen. Portless iPhone, maybe that's a last-minute thing that we see. Maybe that's just one model, or would not be surprised at all if Apple sort of pumps the brakes on that and we see it maybe with the iPhone 15. Maybe that's sort of an S-year change.
That's true.
But looks like Lightning is sticking around another year. And that's kind of what we know. I mean, really here, the story with the iPhone 14 is this radical redesign. It's sort of this refinement of the industrial design. It's kind of paying homage to the iPhone 4. And I am very, very excited. And it's a little difficult not to compare it to the iPhone 13 and go, should you upgrade? But we've talked about this before. I think you have to kind of go off of what we know is going to come. So wait until next year when Apple officially makes this official with the iPhone 13, and then sort of just evaluate your needs. Because as cool as the iPhone 14 is, and as exciting as it sounds, things can always change. And if you waited last year for the iPhone 13, you would be expecting Touch ID under the display, and you'd be expecting some other things that just aren't happening. So I don't know if it's worth waiting for the iPhone 14, but I think that if you are maybe on an iPhone 12 and you're sort of on the fence on an iPhone 13, it probably wouldn't be a bad thing either way, regardless of what happens, to wait another year and wait for that bigger upgrade to come with the iPhone 14, regardless of whether these leaks and these rumors and renders are true or not. What do you think, Matt? Do you think that if someone was to ask you, hey, I'm looking at this, should I go with the iPhone 13 or the iPhone 14? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really, first it depends what phone you have. So like you said, if you have an older phone and you need a new phone, then I think the 13 is going to be a perfect way to go. But if you're on the iPhone 12 and you're not an enthusiast or you're not doing this as your job like we are, I mean, if your phone's working fine, you haven't cracked the front or anything, then like I don't see a reason to upgrade year over year necessarily, unless, you know, there is some crazy software feature or some thing that they haven't talked about where it really does make it worth it. But from the leaks we have, if your phone works, this is kind of the general rule. If your phone works and you're not in need of an upgrade, then like don't upgrade. Like, why are you spending the money for it? The phones are so good these days; they last such a long time. Like, get the phone when you need it, and at that point, get the latest phone. Unless it's like September 13th, don't buy the iPhone 12. Wait for the 13. You know, that kind of thing. But
how painful?
Yeah, just buy the phone that you need at the time.
How painful must it be for Apple employees who know full well that a new iPhone is coming out? I know they can't say anything, and they're coming in, and they must sell a lot of iPhones the day before. Even
I'm sure
what's
they sell a ton.
What's way worse is the week between the announcement and the release, where people just don't know.
That's even worse. Actually,
or you have some people who just don't care, and they'll even come in. I guess that doesn't matter when the iPhone 14. What's also tough is when the iPhone 13 is released, and then they're just in limited supply, so you can't buy them. So maybe you're going to the Apple Store, you're going to get your new phone. And it's like, oh, did you pre-order? No. It's like, oh, we don't have any. So you just kind of have to.
What's the company policy there? Like, for obviously before the phone, most of the Apple employees like kind of keep up with some rumors, so they know that there's something coming. But after that's announced, they're not supposed to say like the iPhone 14's coming or 13's coming.
Yeah.
Like, they're not supposed to say that, right? So
I guess what happens between announcement and release, what is the policy? So you walk in, the iPhone 13 is official, Apple has announced it, and you have someone who goes, "Oh, I want to buy a new iPhone." Do they say, "Oh, by the way, hey, did you pre-order because we got new iPhones coming soon?" Or do they just make the sale and say nothing? I don't know what do you do?
if they're available for pre-order, then you could say like, "Oh, we have the 13 just came out. You can pre-order it and get it out." I think that's probably I wouldn't see why they wouldn't be able to do that. But yeah, are they still pushing the iPhone 12s or the older models? That I don't know, because I've never really been in that situation, because I know like I've never gone in the Apple Store and like blindly tried to buy a phone.
I'm curious if you work Apple retail, or if you work kind of sell retail in general, let us know either by calling in or leaving us a text or commenting in the video version down below. What is that like? Is there a policy for that? I'm sure Apple doesn't want to turn away sales, or any company wants to turn away sales on the assumption that someone might or might not come back for the new phone. So I'm curious what happens then. But I guess on a good note on that, next week after the event, Matt and I will be giving sort of not only a full breakdown of actually what happened and what's new, but also some strategy tips and tricks for iPhone pre-ordering. As two individuals who have done this on many occasions for years and years, I think we have the patented system on exactly how to secure an iPhone for launch date. So we will talk about that next week.
I think both of us have pre-ordered almost every single phone.
Yeah.
Did you order the first one, the 2G, back in the day?
So I got that. I had that phone, but I did not pre-order it. I got it after it was out. So I think it launched in June, and I got it in October or November.
Yeah,
so
I think I was pretty much the same there. Because, that phone had tons of hype behind it. But since then, I'm pretty sure I pre-ordered every single iPhone, which is kind of crazy to say. But I think that's true. Also, I think both of us have camped out at least once.
1 year when they made us do it. And I know we have debates on this, on which it was the 5S. It was the 5S, and they made you. I might be wrong on this, but what I remember is there's 1 year, for whatever reason, they didn't want to do online pre-orders. So if you wanted the phone, you had to go.
There was definitely that.
You had to go to an actual physical Apple retail store, and I went and camped out at like 4 a.m. to get the 5S, which was.
Oh, you did 4 a.m. I did an all-nighter.
I did not.
Got there at like 10 the night before, camped out all night. Oh man, that was I'm pretty sure it was a 5S because I have a picture of it.
Yeah.
And there's no reason I would have done that unless
I don't.
unless like I couldn't
It's an
order
experience. If you've never done one of those, launch overnight things before, it's fun, but it's also kind of draining and boring, and it's easier to order the phone and get it off the UPS truck and on your doorstep. So there's different ways to do it.
And you feel like such like the biggest nerd. Like, wow, am I really waiting all night for a phone? But at the same time, like everyone in line with you is doing the exact same thing. So there's really nothing to be ashamed of.
Or you know what? If you want to have the best of both worlds, just pre-order and pick it up on launch day. So you get to walk into the expedited line.
Still walk in.
You still get that experience. They'll clap for you when you go in, and then you get to get your phone and leave.
Yeah, we'll talk about all the details because there's so many things that have changed, things, strategies on how to order your phone so that if you don't want to, you can just have it show up on your doorstep, or you can, make the experience the way you want it to be. But yeah, we'll talk about that next week. I guess what else has really happened this week? There's the announcement of the September event kind of overshadowed a lot of the news this week, but was there anything else that maybe kind of flew under the radar that is important?
The only thing that I want to bring up and something we can discuss was on Tuesday, there was the news that one of the senior executives on the Apple Car team left for Ford. He was poached by Ford, and according to kind of various sources, especially Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg, this is not only another major loss for the Apple Car team, but a major setback for this team that, for one reason or another, the Apple Car team cannot just keep talent under the roof of that spaceship dome in Cupertino, and they keep losing execs. And now we're hearing, or at least Mark Gurman speculates, that this is going to lead to future delays on the Apple Car, that maybe we thought 2024, 2025, 2026. Now he says that not only is it delayed, maybe we just don't see it. And I don't know if the Apple Car project relies on just one person or if it's going to be just, kind of shut down and over because of this exec's departure. But it does raise questions as to why Apple is losing so much talent on this team, and also what in the world is going on with the Apple Car, and are we going to get to the point where it's just going to arrive too late?
Yeah, that's what this really leads me to think is like something's either not going right, because why would the executives leave? Like if the project is awesome and they're really believing in what they're working on, why would they leave? Like unless Ford offered them like insane money, but like you've got to be making pretty good money at Apple. Like if the project was really cool, you're making good money already, like why would you leave? I don't know. But then, yeah, also that leads to the question, like, what the heck are they even making? Because this has been the most, like, tumultuous, like, project that they've been working on, Project Titan. We've been hearing about this for years. The leaders have shifted so many times. Man, I don't know. And then also, like, on the other hand, you look at a company like Tesla. Tesla has factories. They're building factories all around the world. They have batteries. They're making cars. But even they can't deliver these cars in a speedy amount of time. Our coworker Ralph ordered a Tesla Model Y. He has like a window of when the car's going to get here, but that has shifted multiple times, and it's not like next week. It's months at this point. So if a company like Tesla can't deliver these cars, and that's just Tesla, like every car company right now can't deliver cars, what is Apple going to do? I really don't know.
Yeah, this was a big loss. This was Doug Field. He was the vice president of special projects. And according to Mac Rumors, this is a very experienced guy. He not only worked at Apple, but he also worked at Tesla, oversaw the production of the Model 3, apparently came back to Apple and was working on this project. And I think Mark Gurman sums it up very well in a tweet. He says, this is probably the largest setback in a... Let me rephrase that here. Let me rewind. This is probably the largest setback in a history filled with setbacks for Apple's car project. As I wrote in January, there is no Apple Car launching anytime soon. Not 2024, not 2025, further out now, if ever. And Mark Gurman, he's got chops, he knows his stuff, and now casting some doubt if we'll ever even see the Apple Car is not a good look. And we had just heard that Apple had executives overseas looking, I think, at a Toyota production facility, or in talks with Toyota to maybe make this Apple Car. It seems like what would have been the best possible scenario, whether the rumors are true or not, was Apple just to buy Tesla? Because agree or disagree, they share a lot of the same DNA, and Teslas are regarded as sort of the Apple of electric cars. They are tech-focused, they're sleek, they're simple, minimalistic, and now Apple is kind of competing with Tesla, something they can do. But as the years go on, and as or Tesla rather refines and refines and refines, I'm curious to see when this Apple car launches, what's the EV market even going to look like?
I know. Like 2021, the end of 2021 going into 2022 is where we're seeing a lot of the legacy manufacturers really start to show off what they're going to be producing in the upcoming years. We've got, in the last year, we got the Taycan, we got the Audi GT. These are all very high-end cars, but still, that stuff trickles down to the rest of the line. We've got the ID4 from Volkswagen. Ford has a bunch of EVs that they are currently working on, like the Mach-E, the Ford Lightning. So, these legacy manufacturers are really coming out with their cars at a very quick rate. And you can only imagine that in 5 years, that landscape is going to be packed. Like, there's going to be so many competitors that are going to have electric cars. I think this will never happen, but I think the best way for Apple to really enter this market is to partner with someone like Tesla and say, here's what we're going to do. We're going to partner. We'll help you with the software, like for the user experience section, and we'll let you use our chips. So we'll have the M1, or let's see, the C1, the Car 1 chip for the Tesla Model 3. It runs all the autopilot software. It runs the communication between your iPhone. And because of this partnership, the link between your iPhone and the car is excellent. You get that excellent, experience. But then Apple doesn't have to worry about actually making a car, because the more I think about it, I don't even know how that would work. Like, Apple actually making a car? It just seems crazy.
That's the thing, too, is according to rumors, they're going to partner with someone, whether that's Toyota or Hyundai or Kia. Someone else is going to make the car. And like we talked about before, we've heard plenty of rumors that this was a physical car. No, this is just a self-driving structure for a car, a system for an additional car. No, this is a physical car again. Apple has sort of flip-flopped back and forth on what they're going to do. And if they wanted to build a car, they could do it. Whether they want to pay someone hundreds of millions of dollars, whether they wanted to build their own factory, if there's any company that has the cash to do this, Apple has got the cash to compete. They've got the name and brand recognition. They could do this. But to your point, Matt, a Tesla partnership doesn't seem all that crazy. I know that Elon is a liability, Tesla is a liability on its own, but if Apple was to sort of help Tesla out and say, hey, that global chip shortage, don't worry about it. We've got the supplies. We're going to make the chips. We're going to optimize the software. We're going to do all this for you. Apple and Tesla coming together might just be like a really incredible dynamic duo.
Exactly, because if you look, like, the reason I say that is because if you look at what Apple is really good at, what is it? Software, more importantly, user experience software. So operating systems, like the way you actually interact. And they're really good at making chips. These chips are obviously incredibly powerful. They are really sought after in the personal computer market. Like, if Snapdragon could make the equivalent of the A processor, they would instantly do it if they could. But even more importantly, Apple is so ahead in that way that they seem to not be being hit with the shortage problems that everyone else is, because they make their own chips. They have the factories that they partner with. It seems like that's not really an issue for them, because either it's because they have top dollar, so they're prioritized, or because the way that they manufacture their chips just isn't affecting them. Whichever way they go, it seems like it's not really a problem for them right now. So, bring that expertise over to a car. I think it makes the most sense. Like, yeah, sure, building an EV is fun and all, but like, are you really going to beat the allure of a Tesla? Are you going to beat the price of a Volkswagen ID4 or a Mach-E? I don't think so, at least not in the long term. Like, if Apple builds a real car with everything themselves, even if it's a partnership with like Hyundai or Toyota, like if it's an Apple branded car, this car is going to be expensive. It's not going to have something like the supercharger network infrastructure, although that seems like it's going to be opened up to third parties. But, as of now, it's not going to have that infrastructure. Really what's going to be good about it is the software and the processor behind it, and they could partner with anyone to do that. So I think that's the most logical way to go.
It almost seems a little, I don't want to say ambitious, but it seems like a little bit of a stretch. It's almost like, why is Apple going to pour all this money into this with R&D and production and sales and marketing and all that stuff? Why do they even need to get into the car market in the first place? And I think that, I forgot if it was Steve Jobs, but someone said that, Apple would never enter a product category unless they thought they could do it right or revolutionize it or, do something different. That's kind of why they waited to do the iPhone, I think was the example. Is Apple going to revolutionize the car market or the electric car market in a way we haven't seen before? And look, I love Apple, and I would, highly consider getting an Apple car, but I just don't know if this is really something worth their time or if there's other products or product categories that they could better spend their time on than getting into legacy auto and dealing with just the absolute mess that it seems like developing and distributing a car would really be like.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I'm saying from Apple's perspective, like what is the point? What is the point? I don't understand the reason for this car. Like the AR glasses that have been rumored for a long time, I understand why that would be a successful product, why Apple would enter that market. They're already working on AR. The next logical step is for you to actually see that without having to hold up your phone. It makes perfect sense why they would do that. Whether or not the tech is ready, whether or not it's coming out next year, like that's a whole other story. But the tech itself, I understand. The car, I also understand. Like cars are a necessity at this point in the United States, at the very least. So having an electric car that is better makes perfect sense. But why Apple needs to do that, I don't understand. And what could they do to really revolutionize that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
The only thing I could think is something like you're not actually buying this car, you're renting this car, and it's from your phone. It's like an Uber service. But they're not. If that was the case, they're not the first ones to do that. Tesla is doing that exact thing. And what are the chances that Apple beats Tesla to that market? I just don't see that happening.
I think that Tesla just has a lead right now, and whether you agree with Tesla and Elon or not, they're doing a lot in that space, and Apple has got to put a lot of money into this and a lot of time and effort and a lot of brain power to make this successful. And right now, for whatever reason, it just seems like it's harder and harder for them to keep good talent there on that project.
Right.
There's been such a high turnover rate that I am very skeptical on the Apple Car project, and I'm excited for it, but it's sort of a case where I'll believe it when I see it and as we see maybe more models. And again, this is still very far away, so a lot could change. This could happen. This could not happen. But I think we're at least, would you say, 5 years out from seeing the first Apple Car?
Absolutely. And then, by the time, let's say they really are building a car, by the time like it's almost ready to happen, they're going to have factories. They're going to have production lines.
Yep.
So we're going to know all about it. Like, I don't know how we wouldn't have seen the entire car by the time the car comes out, if it's a real car, because they have to do road testing. They have to do winter testing. If it's an EV, they have to do range testing. Sure, they'll build like a facility where they can do it secretively, but at some point it's got to hit the real road. We've seen every single Tesla leak. We've seen every single car leak. Like, it's just how it is with the car market. You can't keep it a secret. So yeah, 5 years at the least, I think, just because building that infrastructure of building a factory, even if they partner with someone, they're going to have to refit all the machines to make their particular EV, assuming it's an EV. I mean, it could not be an EV for whatever reason, but it'll be an EV if they do make one. I guess, real quick, another thing that could happen in that time is like a company like Tesla starts failing and Apple just buys them, which they've tried to do in the past, or there's talks of that. Who knows what happens in 5 years? Like, things could really change up in this next time.
And I can't find the article, but on Mac Rumors, there is an article just came out a couple days ago that apparently it's rumored that Apple just purchased a test track from another auto manufacturer that they had a lease, and then apparently they bought it for like $100 million. Again, it's rumored that Apple bought it, but obviously there is no doubt that there has been a substantial investment in this process thus far, that they have put a lot of money into this car, and I'm curious to see when it launches, if it launches, what it could look like. I will say the one advantage that Apple has right off the bat, besides a lot of money in the bank, is they have a great retail presence, that their stores are known for having helpful, knowledgeable, friendly associates. They've got stores all over the world, And if they needed a place to sort of do test drives and demos of the Apple car, what better place than the Apple retail stores? Because we know Tesla has kind of fought tooth and nail to open up these showrooms and different test drive locations. Apple already sort of has that infrastructure in place, which is nice, but it probably doesn't help with the other things that is still sort of big challenges that they need to overcome.
Right. Yeah. They have the resources to actually do it. I just don't know why, how, or when. You know, like, I have no doubt that Apple could do it if they wanted to. I just don't see the point necessarily. Yeah. Although, like you said, like, if it happens, I'm all for it. I want to see what this looks like. I just, man, there's been so much, so many issues with this project before and now that who knows what's going to happen going forward before this thing is actually real.
I hope we see it. I'd love to see Apple's take on a car. I think it'd have great software, great hardware, some crazy design. And whether it's an electric or not, who knows? But I don't know. The more time passes and the more of these stories leak out, the more cautiously skeptical and optimistic I am that we ever even see this. But who knows? Maybe we'll see it one day. I hope. I'm going to cross my fingers for it. And Matt, before we wrap up, I do want to get to a question we had sent in from Brad, a longtime supporter and a longtime fan of the Apple Circle and Apple Circle podcast, Brad Caldwell. Thank you very much, Brad. Brad welcomes us back to the podcast. He also says that he's looking to finally pick up an Apple Watch and an M1X MacBook Pro this year. Any reason to go with the 16-inch if the rumors of performance being the same are true? And I guess this kind of nicely leads us into a little discussion we can have here at the end on what is next from Apple. I'm sure we'll have a whole deep dive into what this November event could be and what we could see, but what are your sort of highlights of what we could see at the next Apple event before the end of the year?
Yeah, so there's this rumored November event. We kind of mentioned this last week, but there's talk going back and forth. Are we going to see 3 events or are we going to see 2 events? So we know the September event is happening. And then last year, I believe we got 3 events, which is what is leading people to think maybe we'll have 3 events this year. But I don't think so. I think we're going to have 2, one in November, one in September. That's kind of typical to what Apple has done in the past. And also, it seems like this year they don't have as much to talk about necessarily. The M1 chips and the Apple Silicon is well on its way. They don't have to explain it quite as much anymore. Like, we understand what it is. But we are expecting new computers. So there is this redesigned MacBook that has been called the MacBook Air. I'm skeptical of whether or not it's going to be the MacBook Air because I think it's going to be a regular MacBook. But basically kind of taking cues from the iMac. So a white bezel, it's going to come in colors, white keyboard. So kind of a real big redesign from what we've had for the MacBooks. Whether or not that's the MacBook Air or if it's a completely new line, who knows? But we're expecting that. We're also expecting the next generation of M1 chips. We've had the M1 for what feels like forever now, but it really hasn't been that long. But yeah, we have rumors that the M1X or the M2, whatever the next generation of this M1 chip, we're supposed to be getting that. And with that, we're expecting Pro machines. We've got kind of all the base Macs covered. We got the iMac, we got the MacBook Air, we've got the MacBook Pro. Those all have the M1 chips in them. Those are kind of the consumer products. Now we're expecting the final push into the Pro products. So Mac Mini, iMac Pro, which a lot of us are still expecting, Mac Pro, which I don't think we're going to see in November, but who knows, maybe. And then like the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. The question is, what are we actually going to see? Because who knows? Like, it could be 1 product, it could be 5 products. I really don't know at this point.
Yeah, I think after the September event wraps up and we kind of talk iPhone 13, we'll do a deep dive as more info comes out about this November event and sort of the highlights and what we expect. There's been a lot of controversy over the chips because I've heard that either it's going to be called the M1X or the M2, or some are speculating that there are 2 different chips, that there's an M1, which is like sort of the baseline, and then the M2 and M3, and then the X version is the more powerful version, which we can get into that. But I guess, Brad, to answer your question, if performance is the same, I think that there is no specific reason to go with the 16-inch version. It's just sort of whatever display size you want. If you want the bigger display, go with the 16. But it seems like all rumors right now point to these 14 and 16-inch models being basically the same chips, same redesigned chassis, same mini LED displays. So I think that it's up to you, however you want to spend your money. If you want the bigger display, go with 16 inches. If you don't, go with 14 inches. No matter which way you go, you will be happy with your new MacBook Pro.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the only thing I want to see from this, I pretty much agree with that, but the only thing I want to see is what they're going to do about GPUs. Because right now it's integrated only, and they're pretty good. Like for what what the chips are, like they're the best integrated graphics you can get, pretty much. But when it comes to what I think of as a 16-inch MacBook Pro or a Mac Mini Pro or an iMac Pro, like what I really think about that, when you think about that, what I'm really thinking is it has a powerful GPU.
Yep.
And there's really no word on what they're going to do there. Like they could build their own GPUs as well, or we've heard that they're going to stack chips on top of each other to get more performance out of them. Maybe they make a GPU chip as well, or maybe they just make it compatible with the GPUs that are currently available in the market.
Yeah,
that's the easiest way to go, I think, but I don't think that's what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do, but I want to see that answer, because when I think of a powerful computer, the GPU is what I'm really concerned with today. And that's kind of the limitations of the current M1 chips that we have.
Especially for photo and video work. I mean, right now, right off camera here, if you're watching the video version, I have my 16-inch MacBook Pro with the higher-end GPU, and then that MacBook Pro is literally sitting on top of an external GPU in a Razer sort of external enclosure to give me even more GPU power. Because when you do a lot of video work and a lot of photo work, you need as much GPU processing power as possible. And I know that there is a good sign that we're going to get some good GPU performance improvements with the M1X. But like you, Matt, I'm curious to see what their game plan here is. Is it going to be a separate chip? Is it going to be integrated? Or are they going to have support for external GPUs? I guess we'll just have to kind of wait and see, though. That is a very important feature that we're going to have to get some clarity on.
Yeah, and I guess kind of wrapping it up on what else we might see there. If we don't see iPads at the September event, we will likely see some small update to the iPads. We just got the M1 chip and the iPad Pro, which is actually right underneath the screen right now. I've got the M1 iPad Pro here. It's great, but it's like I don't notice anything about the M1 chip.
Yeah.
Like I don't see the point here. So I don't think they're going to put M1 chips in any of the other iPads right now, at least. But, the iPad mini, the base iPad, should get an update to that. Surprisingly, there's actually a lot we don't know about this upcoming. We started talking about all these rumors kind of ruining these events, but there's actually a lot we don't know about these upcoming computers. Mostly what we do know is that they're coming at some point, and there's going to be new chips, but that's about it.
I'm curious to see when the hype dies down for iPhone 13 and even iPhone 14, sort of when we get into the lull of like mid-October and we kind of get closer to November, will we start to see more leaks and rumors, or will this just remain a mystery? I mean, maybe it'll just remain a mystery and we'll just kind of all be surprised when Apple sort of takes the wraps off of the new Macs. But
I'm down for that.
A lot of exciting stuff happening this fall. And I think, Matt, that about does it for us this week. A lot we talked about. I mean, iPhone 14, iPhone 13 stuff. It's just going to be crazy. The next week, of course, we're going to be doing a full breakdown of everything that Apple announces: new AirPods, new Apple Watches, iPhone 13, and then, of course, those tips, tricks, and secret strategies to make sure you get your Apple products by launch date. Anything else you want to touch on before we wrap things up, or are you going back and getting prepared for the big day that is next Tuesday?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'm excited for next week. It's, even though, like we said, it's kind of boring at this point because we know what to expect. It's still always exciting to see it for real, and then anticipate when you're going to get it in your hands, and then once you use it, you're like, it's the same thing, and then you just got.
I will say, I know that some people have a tradition of sitting down at the end of the day after all the hustle and bustle goes away. They don't look at it in the leaks and rumors, and they just watch the keynote. And if you can do that, I think that's great. It was funny yesterday, after the announcements went out about the September event, I sat down just kind of like scrolling through the Apple TV, and I went through the events page, and I kind of started to watch some of the events over again. And there was something nice about just kind of enjoying it. Like when we do this for work, we are half watching the event, half taking notes, half getting cameras prepped. Like we are working during these events. Yep. And there is something nice to sort of sit back and just sort of watch it. unencumbered, unbombarded by the Twitter feed, and just to sort of see it as it is. And I will say that if you have the opportunity to do that, if I could do it, I would. Maybe try to sit off Twitter for the day, don't go on social media, and just sit down and experience the keynote for what it is and sort of take it all in and get excited for what is coming in just a couple of days.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, interestingly, the last few years I've had to edit as the thing has been going on. So it's like I miss half the event. So I actually have been going back at the end of the day, sitting down, watching the event in its entirety, and it's nice. I like that really a lot. Nice. Even though I know what's coming out, just seeing how they present it and seeing all the nice renders and everything they do, it's a nice experience and something that only happens a few times a year with Apple. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Again, if there is a question that you want to ask or if there's a comment that you want to leave, you can leave that down below in the comments of this video. Again, we are on video now, if you didn't know that. If you're listening to the audio version of this, go over to the Apple Circle podcast on YouTube. It's also in the show notes, and you can watch this conversation in person. That's something new that we're doing, and so far I think it's going pretty well. And then also, if you do want to ask a question and you don't want to just leave a comment, we have a phone number that you can text or call. That's 949-354-3508. And you guys can get involved just like Brad has always done with us. He's one of our, can we call him a super fan? I think he's our super
Brad
fan.
Is definitely a super fan. Brad has been with us since the beginning. Brad, thank you for your support. And you guys can get involved and watch us on YouTube, listen to us on your favorite podcast platform, and sit back, relax, get energized, because we will be right back here next week for a jam-packed episode breaking down everything that happens on the next Apple Circle podcast.